Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studio, it's time for the GNFCC 400 Insider. Connect, build, and grow with the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce.
We appreciate you joining us. We've got a very good discussion today on a topic that nobody has been talking about the past month, which is COVID-19. We've been hearing a lot of information over the past month from the federal government about PPL, PPPB, and PPL. And we've been hearing a lot over this past week from the states regarding getting your hair cut and going bowling and going to restaurants. But we wanted to hear from our leaders here in North Fulton, our great cities, see what they've been doing to address COVID-19 and some of their plans in the future. So again, thank you guys for joining us today. And we want to make sure we thank the North Fulton Business Radio X, who is going to be recording this today. And we'll be able to broadcast this again and be able to watch this with Tiger King tonight if you want to watch it again. So with that, we do have a sponsor today, and it's my co-chair of the Government Affairs for North Fulton Chamber. It's Wendell Strickland, who's owner of his. And when do you want to say a few words? You're still on mute.
Hey, how about now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thanks, Trey. Hey, thanks, everybody, for joining today. I want to personally thank the North Fulton Chamber and their efforts in putting this together. It's fantastic that they were able to pull this together and of course, recording this and putting this through Radio X. I'm Wendell Strickland. I'm the CEO of StrongSide Solutions. I just want to say thank you for letting me be a part of this, and we're proud to be a sponsor. So, Trey, take it back over.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We've got 5 mayors or 5 cities represented this morning. And so I think what I'll do for the time would go in order by alphabetical order. And we'll have each mayor describe what they've done with the COVID-19 and their recovery plans, maybe talk about how the first responders and staff are doing right now, and then maybe any policy changes you might see in the forward future. So I guess we're starting with the great honorable mayor of Alpharetta. I think Jim's on here, so I'll turn it over to the mayor of Alpharetta.
Thank you, Trey. Hopefully my internet connection will hold up. You were getting a little blurry there, and it notified me that my internet connection was unstable. So much like my household at this point. I appreciate y'all doing this. I think this is a great idea, and it's an opportunity for us and the mayors in North Fulton to talk a little bit about what's going on. I'll try to summarize briefly. Right now, immediately, I would assume my counterparts are pretty much the same position as we are. When the governor came out with new directives on Monday, nobody that I'm aware of knew it was coming, or much less the details of it. And so we've been working feverishly to digest the impact of that. And also about 9:00 last night, I was forwarded the details of what he said he was going to be doing on Monday. So now we're talking about those. If y'all haven't already seen the details, then please reach out to us. We'll be glad to provide them. I'm sure Callie's already seen them and y'all are already digesting them. But I mean, the devil's always in the details. And so while there was a lot of publicity, I don't know about my counterparts, but I've had a tremendous volume of people upset that, the world's coming to an end and that the governor has opened up every restaurant and tattoo parlor in the state. And that's not the case. And so we've been dealing with some of that because people just don't understand. There's a lot of fear out there. There still is. So that's what this week's been like so far. This morning, I spent some time going back over the governor's reviews. And I think there's a lot better policies in there than people are giving him credit for. We can, guess about the timing and all of those things. But the fact is, this has never happened before. The governor is dealing with stuff I can't even imagine, trying to create a policy that applies to Roswell and Jessup and the city of Atlanta. They're just very different communities in a very different state. So we're working on that, and I'm sure within the next few days we'll be crafting ways within our local ordinances to accommodate that and adjust accordingly. But I want to take just a moment to let people know, and maybe you're aware of this, and I've talked about it before. It wasn't the government that shut down the economy of the state of Georgia. There's this perception amongst the talking heads and the news channels and things like this that the governor has wrought havoc upon our economy, and now he's wreaking havoc upon the health of this state. It's absurd, and I think all of our mayors are aware of that, and probably most of you are. The people of Georgia shut down our economy. They heard what was going on. They knew the threat to their businesses and their residents and their communities, and they took it upon themselves to start sheltering in place. Our restaurants in Avalon and North Point Mall were closed overwhelmingly long before we, on a local level, started putting in ordinances, and the governors came forth even after that. So while there is a lot of tremendous pressure about the politics, and we just live in a world where politics are divisive, and that's going to happen. But what we're focused on, I think my fellow mayors are probably doing much the same. We know that if we're going to get the economy going, people have to feel safe. Because if every restaurant in the city of Alpharetta opened up today, they would probably do about 5% of the sales they did 3 months ago. And they can't sustain themselves. And I think in general, we need to be cognizant as policymakers and as business leaders, not to put too much emphasis on the political restrictions, the laws and the ordinances, which are almost impossible to fully enforce anyway. And start working together to create that safe environment. And I think that's what's going to bring us out of this. And the quicker people feel comfortable leaving their home and going to a restaurant or going to a mall or something like that, that's what's going to make the difference. So that's what we're focused on locally. I think we'll be working closely with our fellow municipalities because viruses don't know city lines. And so while we have unique characteristics to each of our communities, we have to be cognizant of what's going on around our borders and work together as a community. So that's kind of where we are and what we're doing right now. And I'll turn it over to the next mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. We got the Mayor of Honorable Lockwood from Mayor Milton. You're mute.
Sorry. All right. Thanks, Trey. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's interesting. People ask me, Joe, how are you handling this with, how the city and obviously day-to-day business and lifestyle? And I said, well, it kind of reminds me of when you get that occasional once every 100-year major snowstorm and your city gets blanketed and everything's shut down. And so nobody can go to work or only emergency personnel and whatnot, critical operations. Everybody else is kind of sheltered in place. And okay, we'll deal with it next week. We can't do this now, so we'll do it later. So I feel a little bit like we've had that snowstorm, except it just hasn't gone away. So it's a never-ending Groundhog Day on a snowstorm as far as just crippling the operations and day-to-day life. Obviously, it's getting better, but anyways, it's I agree with Mayor Gilvin, and as far as our community and our citizens, it's a really tough. I wouldn't want to be in the governor's position right now. I tell people a lot of times it's, sometimes your best leading decisions are when 50% of the people are mad at you and 50% are happy, and that's never an easy task. So it's interesting. As far as the state mandate and the orders coming down from the governor, and again, I have no other intel than anybody else, but my theory is this. Obviously, we've got to, for everybody's sake, got to get the economy going and day-to-day life back. but it's got to be done in a safe way. And my thoughts are this: if let's just say, and I'm making up a day, let's say it's July 31st is the day when things would be safe and everything needed to be up and running. You can't flip a switch on July 30th and the next day everything be running. So my thoughts when the governor, again, was surprised on the timing and whatnot, but when that came out was, and it seems to be playing out, was they must have realized that it's not going to instantly happen. I don't know very few restaurants, even though they're allowed to open on Monday, that are prepared or even thinking about opening. Most of the people I talk to are saying, we're not going to probably go out to eat at restaurants, for another 30 days or as Mayor Gilvin said, until they feel comfortable. So in my opinion, I believe they were trying to start rolling things out, but knowing that there would be quite a lag time. So, and again, I think especially, from all of our North Fulton cities, but also Milton, our citizens are the ones that they're educated and smart and aware of everything. They're doing everything they can to keep safe. So obviously part of it is our job to implement things so that they can do that. But I believe that the average citizen is making, every effort that they can. It's definitely been a trying time. We've learned a lot. We're getting used to doing virtual meetings like this. We've been able to come up with a lot of processes at City Hall to keep business going, but doing it remotely and, closing down City Hall, but open up our vestibule with tables and whatnot, and people can drop off paperwork, and then it's quarantined for 24 hours, and then somebody will get back with them and whatnot. So I'm really proud of our city staff for being able to pretty much keep business rolling as usual. Although, just a little bit, it's a little bit different and taking a little bit longer, but it has been pretty amazing to see everybody work together and figure out ways to get things done and whatnot. Obviously, I want to, big shout out to our public safety who, those guys are out there every day, and the other critical services, as well as our healthcare folks that are working hard to keep us safe. So, again, it's hard to say exactly what the future is going to look like, but I do believe it's going to be a little bit different. And over time, we'll look back and we'll be doing things years from now that this spawned. So I'm hopeful and looking forward to getting back to a normal life, but we've got to be careful that make sure everybody's safe and we get past this. One thing in closing, it dawned on me the other day, and I don't know if you guys think the same thing, but I was sitting there with my wife and my son, and we were talking about this situation. And I said, what's really weird is in the past, we've always been able to sit there and be able to, a child and the parents tell them, when we were young and we went through this situation, this is what we did. Or I remember my parents telling me, when this happened, this is what we did. But we can all sit around there with our kids and our parents and whatnot, and none of us have been through this before. So it's certainly challenging, but I appreciate all of our, the other mayors and city council persons, our staffs. I know our city managers and all the different cities have been talking. We're all communicating so that hopefully we can help each other learn and work together to do the right thing. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Mayor Still from the great city of Mountain Park. He's up next.
Thank you. Yes. I want to first say, like my other mayors, I appreciate everything that our first responders and our medical and health people have done in this community to help under these circumstances. Joe, you're absolutely right. We will forever be different from this point forward, just like we were on 9/11 and other big, huge events in our present history. It is going to be a different society out there after we get past this. I think things will change and in some ways for the better. And And in some ways, it won't be quite the same. We won't be having any twister tournaments or anything like that on the green anymore. But people will respect each other's distances in a much greater manner now. Because Mountain Park is a small community and it's all residential, we don't have the same challenges that my fellow mayors have. But we certainly have our own. And one of those is that because we're a beautiful natural setting down here, we have a lot of folks that are coming in from other counties and other cities that are coming down to enjoy the lakes and to get out and get some essential exercise and fresh air. That brought some new challenges for us because, like anything in our communities, the biggest issue sometimes is enforcement. And we've managed to do after the initial couple of nice sunny weekends, we were able to do fairly well with the help of DNR and RPD and the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department, because part of Mountain Park is in Cherokee. And so people have started respecting the fact that you can't gather in large groups down by the lake, and you can't go out and be less than 6 feet apart. The 10-6 rule is starting to really catch on. And so we haven't had as big of an issue in the past week or so. We are looking forward to the ending of the shelter in place, but we're going to assess how that's going to take place once we get to the next meeting, which is next week, and we're going to discuss it at that point. I certainly am willing and ready to do anything I can to help my fellow mayors get back to a point where our citizens who work and play and enjoy themselves and shop in the surrounding cities, Milton, Roswell, Johns Creek, Alpharetta, it's certainly going to be a slow roll to get back to what, like Joe said, hopefully will be our new normal. So we're doing pretty good over here. We're everybody. We haven't had any cases of COVID that I'm aware of in Mountain Park, and so we hope to maintain that consistency. But we still will be ready to face any challenges that come from this. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. And I certainly am getting used to these Zoom meetings. I will tell you, our first city council meeting on Zoom was hacked within 20 minutes, and it ended real abruptly. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We go to the next honorable mayor from the great city of Roswell, I think, who's probably the most famous mayor right now in North Fulton. We're going on national TV the other day. So, Mayor Henry.
Thank you very much. I don't know that I'm the most famous mayor in North Fulton. Maybe infamous, but
infamous. Yeah, there you go.
Let me just say that I think that we are very fortunate to be living in North Fulton. All of the cities in North Fulton are well prepared to deal with this. I don't think any of us have known or could have predicted the depth and breadth of this virus, but we are very well positioned for it. So I feel like we're fortunate to be in North Fulton, and certainly our citizens in Roswell are fortunate to be in Roswell. And as we move forward, and you all know, I would like to caution everybody to follow the CDC guidelines. I would like to caution everyone to move slowly and carefully and calculated as we go into the next steps, because we don't know what this virus is going to bring. We don't know if there's a second wave. We don't know if this is going to be a seasonal virus. We just have no idea. So at a local level, and I respect the governor's orders, but at a local level, my job is the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. And that is what we will continue to deal with. And knowing what the governor has, his orders and his restaurant orders just came out last night, and we are looking at those very carefully. And having said that, I just want everyone to understand that we are looking at those very carefully. We are scrutinizing those orders. And what we want to do is make sure that our citizens and our business owners are safe, because that's our number one priority. So this is uncharted territory. And I often say to people when I ran for mayor, and people ask me now, what do you think about all of this now that you're in it? And my response has always been, I signed up for it, but I did not sign up for a pandemic. So having said that, like I said before, we're in uncharted territory, and I'm really looking to all of our North Fulton mayors, all of our North Fulton leadership to really step up and work together and keep our citizens safe.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Henry, and for the city of Roswell. Next city would be, we've got the Honorable John Paulson, who's the Mayor Pro Tem, City of Sandy Springs.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So life in Sandy Springs is as good as it can be considering what's going on around us. The city in general has focused on, since we've been closed down, even before, how do we keep the community safe? How do we keep our workers safe? And how do we continue to do business as a city? Life goes on, as I've said. So most of our departments are still working. Many of them are remote. Occasionally someone shows up at City Hall. City Hall has been closed, but we're managing to get it done electronically. It's actually phenomenal how much you can get done without standing across the table from somebody and talking to them. I miss talking to people, as I'm sure we all do, but there's a lot that's being done. The city is functioning reasonably well considering these circumstances, these restrictions. Regarding COVID-19, I think we've had 5 cases that we know of within the staff. So we've had a few challenges. Everybody's recovering or on the way to recovering. But 5's not been that bad, I don't think. I'd rather it was none, like Mountain Park, but that's not the way life is here. The other part of this is we keep talking about when will the cities open? And I think our citizens, as has been said, our citizens are going to decide when this really comes back, because many people are still concerned. These guidelines, I don't know of anybody in Sandy Springs that's read these guidelines and said, yippee, I'm going to go have dinner every night next week. That's not the way it's going to happen. But anyway, we'll have to see how that goes. We've done a number of things to try to help our restaurants. We have a restaurant program where you can take out and dine at home or take out and dine in. And that's kept several of the restaurants afloat. I don't know if they're afloat. They're open, they're serving. So that's working out pretty well. We've got, when this first started, it turns out we have a lab in Sandy Springs that does testing for COVID-19. So we've been fortunate that, and we've passed this on to Fulton County and others as well, but there's a lab that does these. So if we have a first responder that's been exposed, he can be tested, and after a certain amount of time, if he comes up negative, he can go back in service, and that's helped. Otherwise, they're quarantined for 2 weeks at a time, and at one point we had 10 or 11 firemen that were quarantined. None of them got it. So that's helped, and it's Capstone Healthcare. They're doing a pretty good job. I talked to, and I'm a little more granular than some of the other folks, but I talked to our police department last night. I talked to our police chief and asked him what life is like. And he said, well, in general, the police department is nowhere near as busy as they used to be, which is a good thing. You've all heard about speeding, including the 172 mile an hour people or the 129 mile an hour people. They've had a number of tickets. One of the challenges is more accidents. There's a more serious accident when an accident occurs because everybody's going faster. So the wrecks have been much more serious than they've been in the past. We're also starting to see an uptick in domestic violence. And I don't know whether you guys are hearing about, the guys and girls are hearing about this or not, but everybody being cooped up for this long, the police are responding to more domestic disturbance calls than they've been recently. And we'll have to see how that plays itself out as this starts to open up over the next couple of days. And then the police chief said something to me last night I thought was interesting. The National Guard has called up 3 reserve units, two Marine and 1 Army reserve unit. And our police chief lost 3 officers who are being called up. So if you have folks in your city that are National Guard reservists, they may wind up being called up. They're not being called up for long periods of time. 45 days is what I'd heard, but they're gone. and they're doing some of these other things. That's really about it. Again, life is as good as it can be. My list of things to do around the house never seems to end. I guess that's probably true of everybody. I have played golf a couple of times. It's funny. You can go play golf if you have your own cart and you don't touch anybody. Actually, you don't even take your ball out of the hole anymore. So there's some recreation that's available, but it's pretty limited. We're all waiting to get a little more freedom here going forward.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for that report. Thank you to all those on the city. I'll be remiss. We have a great turnout this morning. I think 123 already. We got our great honorable senator from the District 56, Senator Albert. I want to make sure I recognize him. He had a great town hall last night. But I think this time we'll go into question and answer at this point. So we had some great questions submitted from our guests and from our attendees today. So I guess the first one I'll start off would be about, are you policing social distancing? I know that's a question and all. Folks might be going out the next weekend. Are you locally policing social distancing?
I don't know if you, Trey, if you care who goes first, but I'll take a stab at it. I would say when you say when you describe policing, we're not going out arresting people, but what we are doing, our police officers are very aware of the rules and the governor's orders. So if there are, and our citizens have been really good about it, but if there are cases in the public areas that people are out and are in groups or whatnot, they are certainly explaining to people what they need to be doing. And in almost all cases, everybody's been very cordial and taken the lessons there. So that's what we're seeing. But again, as I said earlier, our citizens have been really pretty good about taking things in their own hands. But it's good to kind of remind them sometimes.
Hey, any other mayors like to?
Well, I'll tell you that in Mountain Park, we have a lot of kids that are around the lakes fishing and things of that nature. And we have what we've dubbed the parent patrol, that we have some parents that get out there and they don't hesitate to go point out to these kids that might be an interesting lure, but you need to look at it from 6 feet or more. And you can't be gathering in little groups, showing off, your tackle or your fish or things of that nature. So the citizens have really stepped up to help make this as attainable as possible for us to keep the 10-6 rules in place. And I certainly appreciate that, as well as the authorities that come through and patrol and make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Gilvin?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll agree with both previous mayors. For the most part, the overwhelming majority of businesses and people in Alpharetta are already following those guidelines because it's in their best interest to do so. I will add, though, that a lot of people don't understand that local municipalities are actually prohibited from enforcing those things, which I understand why the governor thought that would be necessary. But it puts us in the awkward position of getting all these angry, upset, Facebook posts and emails and things. Why are you letting them do this? And my neighbors are out in their front yard. And, some of them are really absurd at times. But, our response has to be, well, even if we wanted to, we can't. And so, of course, our officers are out there. In the rare instances that there's something that comes up that needs to be addressed, they'll inform them about it. I think another thing is the communication is difficult because we really weren't able to share the details of what people could expect for a while. And so communication's key. People are going to abide by it if they understand it overwhelmingly. But the challenge we've had, I think, more is just people not understanding that you can't ask us to go into a gym because somebody's in there doing a personal training session and was stupid enough to post it on Instagram. We can't go in there and tell them to shut it down. It's not our authority. It's taken away from us.
Well, and Trey, I would like to say that here in Roswell, we are strongly recommending that our citizens and our businesses follow the CDC guidelines, which of course includes social distancing. And one of the things that we've been doing here in Roswell is an educational program. And our police officers, our chief of police, is routinely out in our businesses. He is out in our public spaces, and it's an educational program. So he's telling people, really, if you want us to leave these parks open, you need to social distance. You need to follow these guidelines. If you want to enjoy all of the things we have to offer in Roswell, you need to follow the rules. And what we have found is that people are more than willing to follow the rules. And we have not had to cite anyone for anything in the past. And we just continue to educate. And I'll let me say this much. If the chief of police approaches me and educates me on social distancing, I can tell you right now it's going to be 6 to 8 feet easy. So I think that that's very, very helpful when we're interacting with our residents, because people just want to be outside. They want to enjoy. They want to go to restaurants, and they want to be able. My anniversary is tomorrow, and my husband and I will be at home enjoying that. But I think that people really have a need to be outside, especially in Roswell. People move to Roswell because of our parks, our schools, our neighborhoods, and they want to be outside enjoying that. And I don't fault them for that. However, sometimes people do get a little overzealous, and it does take our police to, just remind them what we're dealing with. And while we're not dealing with a lot of COVID cases in North Fulton, there is still a threat. So that's just my reminder to folks.
Thank you, Mayor Henry.
Oh, sorry. So, Trey, real quick, when this first started, our police noticed in several of our parks that there were still organized sports going on. So they very politely went over and talked to them and said they really can't be doing this, and everybody disbanded. And we've not had that since. But that's one of the reasons why we did close the fields in our parks, just because we didn't want a situation where these pickup games or organized games would happen. But we've not had any since the beginning, which is a testament to most people, again, respecting this virus.
Anybody else want to chime? I think everyone's chimed in. The next question is, will North Fulton City work together in terms of what to reopen first? How closely will you guys coordinate your activities? Since a lot of folks don't see the city lines in North Fulton.
Well, Trey, I guess I'll go ahead and start. I think we've done a great job amongst our municipalities in North Fulton of staying in communication with each other. One of the benefits, at least from my perspective, of the governor stepping up a few weeks ago and making a statewide declaration was the fact that it eliminated the need for us to keep communicating amongst ourselves to try to figure out, okay, what's the best path forward? Because we want to work together, not against each other, and have some consistency. And we spent, at least in my experience, we spent a tremendous amount of time over those first few weeks of coordinating amongst ourselves, communicating amongst ourselves, trying to find a path forward that made sense for all of us, and working with Fulton County to do the same. And once the governor put in place his restriction, whether you liked them or not, whether we wanted to enforce them or not, at least there was one plan. And then it kind of took the pressure off of us, and we could focus more on taking care of our individual communities, looking to the future about how do we get the economy going when things do start to come back. So I think that's been very helpful and has relieved a lot of that stress. But now we're having to move on to the next section of, okay, now how do we work together to bring back all of North Fulton? And I assume that we'll be in close communication again after that.
Good. Anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah, I just like to add, I also think like what Mayor Jim said, that the communication, and I want to thank Senator Albers for his weekly meetings. Those are very informative, and it kind of keeps me. I don't have the same exposure to the commercial side of it, but I certainly am glad to hear what's going on out there, and I look forward to getting back to the point where we can go and socialize in Roswell, Milton, Alpharetta, Johns Creek, those areas. But it has been very beneficial to hear what's going on and get the feedback.
I would also add, certainly agree with the previous two mayors. Also, our staff and our city managers have been communicating too. So I know every city is a little bit different and has different facilities and structures, but the good thing is all of our not only elected officials, but our city staffs and managers have been talking to, so that number one, there's no surprises, but also that we can, kind of run things by each other to make sure that we're not doing something that might negatively impact Alpharetta or another one of our sister cities or vice versa type of thing. So again, one good thing that's come out of this, or there's probably several, but it's just the communication and the working together that everybody's doing.
If I may, one of the things that also happened was the cities put a questionnaire out to the businesses in North Fulton, and there are over 800 people, I guess, responded to this. And I saw some of the results this past week, and I thought that was a very good way of getting a snapshot of what the business community in this North Fulton area is thinking about, what their concerns are. I'm sure many of you have seen this, but I thought that was a good example of the entire North Fulton community talking about this subject as a group.
Thank you guys for sharing that. I think a lot of folks may not know that, the coordination of all you guys working together. I know there's North Fulton Mayors Association. We worked closely before COVID-19. It's like you're working more closely to get us out of this recovery. So thank you for that. Some of you guys have alluded to it already about the changes of having meetings virtually. Do you see the current situation fundamentally changing the relationship between city government and the citizens?
Let me start. Because I've been thinking about this one. As you know, when you have virtual meetings, you can't have public comment. So one of the challenges in putting our agendas together is, how do we get the citizens? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Hello?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Are you losing me?
No, we got you.
Okay. So one of the things staff is trying to figure out is, how do we engage the community in our city council meetings? And it's one thing for all of us to talk to each other, but there are issues that come before all cities that require public comment. And so far, we've not been able to figure out how to engage in a meaningful way the public. And we've deferred a number of items that we're going to have to deal with one of these days. Zoning is obviously one of them. We'll just have to see how that plays out. But that's been one of the challenges that has changed the relationship. I'm not hearing the citizens complain necessarily. We've not had complaints in the call center, but I think everybody's being patient, hoping that we can begin to having some more, community involvement and public involvement in our meetings going forward.
Thank you. Mayor Henry?
I would like to say that communication is key. The partnerships that we have with the community as well as our business owners are key. And for me, the one-on-one is very, very important. There's a different communication style when you're meeting in person than when you're doing a Zoom meeting. So I really see us moving back, or I would like to see us move back to a more one-on-one approach where we can physically meet and talk with people, where we can physically have council meetings. I think it's a long ways off. However, I do feel that it's really important because while Zoom meetings get us partway there, I think everyone would agree with me that Zoom meetings are just not the same thing as meeting in person, having a conversation, building those partnerships with people. It's just not the same. So I am hoping that when we push through this, that I know here in the city of Roswell in the month of May, We will have all virtual meetings. That includes council meetings, committee meetings, and boards and commissions. We will do that for the month of May. I'm not sure where we'll go after that, but I think that it's very important, once again, because, we're building these relationships with our citizens and our business owners. And if you don't have that physical contact, I think it's very difficult to build that relationship.
And if I may, along those lines, I think going back to that relationship between city government and the residents, it will change. As Mayor Henry said, we've had Zoom meetings that, man, it was tough at the beginning. When we had our emergency order that was the shelter in place, poorly timed the day before the governor just went ahead and did it anyway. We had almost 300 people participate in a Zoom meeting. And while this is a great group here, trying to conduct a city council meeting with 300 participants was pretty crazy. And we learned from that experience. We had people from the gallery, the public, stop me and interrupt me and tell me that I had forgotten something, and we had to learn how to conduct it. So, it was a learning experience, but we've gotten better at it. And as Mayor Henry said, I don't know when we'll start back with actual physical presence of city council meetings in City Hall. I think based on the guidelines, we could probably come up with some ways to be able to do that in the next few weeks if we choose to do so. But even when that happens, I think there's value in having interaction with the public if you can figure out how to balance it. Because, typically when I'm in city council meetings, I usually allow public comments on issues and at the end of our council meetings for up to 3 minutes. And I'm sitting there looking at 272 people that might want to take 3 minutes to talk and comment. But you kind of play it by ear. And what I ended up doing is, because on a Zoom meeting, you have a chat function. I said, tell you what, everybody, I can't spend 6 hours here listening to 3 minutes a piece, but I'll give you all 3 minutes to post your comments in the chat function and things like that. And I think it's helped me understand that we've got an opportunity moving forward to maybe leverage that technology. Even if we, for example, if we started physical city council meetings in 3 weeks, there are people who may be at risk, elderly, or have some of the conditions that predispose them for, serious bouts if they were contacted by the virus. How can we incorporate some of that social distancing to allow more public participation from home? So I think that's changed. And just a lot of the other services that we've always provided in public, forcing people to come down to City Hall to pay for a business license or to buy a garbage tag or something. I think we'll rethink a lot of that moving forward as well. So hopefully it'll end up making the relationship better, but we'll see.
And let me just say, I agree with Mayor Gilvin that, we're entering into a new normal. And what I would, and I don't normally speak for all the North Fulton mayors, but what I would be comfortable speaking for the North Fulton mayors is that while we might be having virtual meetings, while there might be some social distancing, I would like to remind everybody that we are extremely accessible. You can call us, you can text us, you can email us, and we are here to listen to you and have a conversation with you. It might just not be on the TV screen.
Great. Anybody else want to add?
Well, I will say that I know we've learned a lot through this experience, and we've had much better attendance through the virtual meetings. So we plan on incorporating that into our future meetings as well as the physical meetings, because the more participation, the better the decisions and the more informed decisions that we can make. So it will continue.
I'd like to add to that too. It's interesting. We have found new ways to, virtual meetings. I know had a meeting with some citizens and a business issue the other day. Obviously, we're making do with that. People are working from home and whatnot. But I think to the previous mayor's points, at some point, it's not there is a value to one-on-one or an in-person meeting, as well as working together. I think a lot of people, City Hall, and I noticed some private businesses, at first it's kind of a novel thing to work from home and all that. But at some point, everybody does want to get back and together and collaborate. So again, I think what we've learned out of this, there's probably some things that we can do without getting in a car or physically meeting. But I think we're also learning that there are some things that it is better to have human contact. So,
great. Thank you, guys. Next question would be, what other organizations or committees are being formed to help develop a re-entry plan for your city? The city and businesses.
Well, I would like to go ahead and mention that here in the city of Roswell that we are partnering with our Convention and Visitors Bureau as well as Roswell Inc. And we've got a business recovery task force. We're looking at, we're talking with our businesses, and we are looking at what does this recovery look like and what changes with your local government? Because as you all know, local government has a certain role. Fulton County has a different role, and the state of Georgia has a much different role, as well as the federal government. But the local government, what does that look like, and how can we help people recover from this, our citizens, as well as our businesses? And I think it's really important to help our businesses recover from this, and what can the city of Roswell do to help that? So we're opening the dialogue. We've got over 20 businesses, as well as city staff, and like I said, Roswell Inc., and also the CVB, to all pull together as a unified front as we face these challenges.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Henry. Other cities, are you guys something similar or in plans to create something similar?
So I'll chime in real quickly. One of the things I've been impressed with is the local Chamber of Commerce, both Sandy Springs as well as North Fulton Chamber. There's quite a bit going out, quite a bit of information going out, especially related to trying to get some of this funding from the government. On its best day, this is complicated, and these days it's even worse. But I think they and our staff, our city staff's been working with them as well to get the message out and make sure that as many people hear about this and can avail themselves of these funds. And I'm assuming the chamber will continue to work on strategic reopening and smart reopening as this goes forward. I think they've done a really great job. They've stepped up very nicely in concert with staffs of the various cities.
Great. Thank you, John.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that, over the past week and a half, 2 weeks, since the governor put in the statewide shelter-in-place restrictions, it's allowed us in Alpharetta to focus more on that, the recovery. Haven't brought a task force together yet, but we have been working on the concept. I've had a lot of conversations with business leaders in various communities, the Convention Visitors Bureau and the Chamber. And so I would imagine next week, now that we have a little clarity on what reopening looks like in the governor's opinion, I think we'll be getting in the same room because we've got some great ideas. But part of the challenge in this whole episode has been that there's so many moving parts between guidance from the feds, the state, the county, that when you bring everybody together, come up with a great plan, by the time you get it on paper, the news tells you that somebody's changed something. And so they moved the goalpost. And so timing is very key. You can't delay forever, but you try to make sure you have as much relevant information before you make any new policy changes. But yeah, I think we'll all be working closely with the chambers and the business community for the next few weeks to get things back to some sense of normalcy.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
And thank you, Mayor Gilvin, for bringing up that point, because I would also like to thank the chamber. You play a very important role And everything is about partnerships and communication. And going forward, that's key. That's key for all of us.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. Mayor Lockwood, Mayor Still.
Yeah, I would want to reiterate that too. Thanks for the chamber, just basically helping pull us all together and being a conduit and a link to do that. So thank you, Callie, and all your team for that.
I echo those sentiments. Yeah.
Great. So I know there's questions that I've gotten a lot over the past week about restaurants and parks. So I know that the parks have been most of them. We had the great parks in North Fulton been closed. Any timetable about opening parks, and then as far as it's a two-part question on restaurants. If the restaurant does follow the 39 guidelines the governor has put out, be able to eat outside. Because we've got some great restaurants in North Fulton that a lot of people eat outside. So those are two questions. I don't know if you guys can answer those or.
I'll take a shot first.
Okay.
As far as parks, and Milton's a little bit different. We've got a lot of passive areas, parks, trails, and whatnot, which have been open. As far as active parks and programs, we've not opened those yet. And in fact, our staff has been talking with other city staffs and whatnot, and we certainly want to take our time and do the right thing and look at all the guidelines on that as far as when we open up our active facilities and whatnot. One of the things I started to mention earlier, we're talking about social distancing. The one issue we have had to deal with our public safety and citizens is some of our trail systems, obviously, since they are open and people don't have anything else to do and they want to get outside, that's been a little bit of a challenge because everybody's, trying to congregate and walk on the trails, and that's kind of overloading that. So that's been a little bit of an issue to deal with. And again, that's good and bad. It's good that people can get out and whatnot, but get too many. Again, I'll go back to the thing with restaurants. I personally believe that even though the governor opened up restaurants, say this Monday, whatever, the 30th, that really is probably 60 days from now when restaurants will be prepared and will self-manage themselves to be opening up. So I know it's a tough thing. The restaurants that are doing takeouts, it's obviously a way to try to save a little bit of business and revenue, but it's a small percentage of, a lot of at least sit down restaurants. Obviously fast food restaurants are doing well with it. But yeah, with the sit down outside and even the regulations with 500 feet, you can only have 10 people for 500 feet. You look at a downtown restaurant, Alpharetta restaurant or so, for example, that might be 1,500 square feet. That's only 30 people, and they might normally have 100. It almost doesn't make sense for them to open up. So I think it's definitely a challenge.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, and I would like to say, as far as the parks go, what we have learned through this is that we are a regional draw for our parks. And what we want our parks are open, but our parking lots are closed. And that is designed basically to encourage people from outside our community to not come in to use our parks. We want to shelter in place, and that means you shelter in place in your own community, which, just helps us to not cross-contaminate. But like I said, we've got a regional draw with our park system, and that has just been something that we're trying to deal with, and we've closed our parking lots, trying to help deal with that. Now, if you live in Roswell, you can easily get to one of our parks. You can walk, and we have found that people are social distancing. People are being respectful. And, we certainly do appreciate that. But with the governor's new orders, we have to be very careful. And we're going to keep our parking lots at our parks closed. And also our ball fields, playgrounds, the type of things where people tend to forget about social distancing. So we're going to continue that for now. And we're just hoping that people do remember and respect those boundaries. As far as restaurants, we've got Cinco de Mayo coming up. And you're laughing.
I know, it's serious.
Because Cinco de Mayo is a festival. I would love to get out and have a margarita and enjoy the beautiful weather we're having, but we've just got to be very cautious about this and how we open things up. So I think the majority of our restaurants are going to be, from what I've heard, they're very respectful of the orders. They are very cautious. And as Mayor Gilvin stated, or maybe it was Mayor Lockwood, I apologize, that it is not economically feasible for many of our restaurants to open up with only a half capacity, a third capacity. They're better off to do the curbside pickup or the delivery. So I think that our business leaders are recognizing that while the governor has opened up many of these things, actually that is not what it's going to look like. His order is not what it's going to look like, because there's common sense and business models involved here.
And if I could, I know we're getting kind of long on time.
Yeah.
Try to be brief.
Thank you, Mayor Henry.
Alpharetta parks have been open. The green space has been open. The trails have been open. We did close down our sports programs, of course. And our guiding principle now and moving forward is, not when can we open up things, is when will it be safe? When can we make it safe to resume these activities? And once we determine how we can do that, that'll determine the timeline. If we can have baseball over the summer, we'll have baseball over the summer. If we can't do it safely, then we won't. And I think a lot of the questions that I've seen on here also, the specific questions about childcare groups up to 10, if you read the information that was put out last night, the governor was pretty thorough. I think they've broken it down. So the grouping of 10 is within a classroom, things like that. So I encourage everyone who has specific questions. A lot of that stuff really is detailed in that stuff. The restaurants, for example, for the next few weeks, cities have no control over whether people are eating outside, basically based on the statewide guidelines. And so as long as restaurants are meeting those, criteria that are laid out there very specifically for social distancing and sanitizing, then that's what'll be the dictating guidelines for the next few weeks. So I think in general, we're in a good place now. We're better off than any of us, anticipated a few weeks ago with the severe projections and stuff like that. And so I look forward to working with the chamber and my fellow mayors and everybody else to try to get us out of this as healthy and as safely as possible, as soon as possible.
Well, thank you, Mayor Gilvin. And I want to, this time we got 2 minutes left. So I want to again thank all the mayors for participating this morning. We're very lucky in North Fulton to have such a great leadership in the cities and our business community. We're here to support you in the cities. Again, I want to thank our sponsor and my co-chair, Wendell Strickland, for your sponsorship this morning. And our partner, John Ray at North Fulton Business Radio. Thank you for your partnership. And my gut, I'll be remiss is not to recognize Government Affairs Committee, who many of you on this call. So thank you for that. And at this point, I want to thank Stacy and Callie. I'm going to turn it over to them to close out today's meeting.
Thank you, Trey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trey. I appreciate you doing this, and the Government Affairs Committee, of course, work all year to have this kind of content, this kind of communication, which is key in all of this. My thanks to the mayors for being here with us this morning, and Mayor Pro Tem as well. I do want to just wrap up by saying, again, thank you to everybody who's on the call. We are going to continue to bring you webinars like this that I think are good for the region to hear what everyone is saying. There are items on our website. We have started a new file effective Monday on our website. We have a responsible recovery folder, which we're compiling information. Jim, you mentioned the mayor's information came out last night. I should have that up there today for everybody. And so I just want to make sure everybody knows we continue to put that on the front of our website. It is not password protected. when this occurred, the chamber made the decision that we were for every business in North Fulton, not just our members. And so we continue with that as we're trying to bring the latest information to everybody. I do want to mention, because our mayor's mentioned it, and thank you very much for the shout out about the chamber's work. I'm very proud of my team who's been working from home over the last 5 weeks. But we have established, and it has now been board approved, our economic recovery task force plan. There are 5 areas, and we're starting to stand up those work groups. We recognize that this is not a work group that's going to work, in a week and have everything together. I think Jim made a good point of, this is an evolving situation. Every day we find out something new. And so we need to be nimble about that. We expect that this task force will work over the next 12 to 18 months in these 5 particular areas. Anyone who has an interest in participating, please email me. Right now, we've gotten that out with our board of directors and have started talking to our partners like Roswell Inc. and have been really working to try and make sure that we're inclusive in this, which is our intent. So the 5 areas are workforce development and unemployment, small business and entrepreneurship. We know that we're going to have a number of new entrepreneurs coming out of this, and we're eager to work with them. Cash flow and liquidity, which we've already seen with the passage yesterday of additional dollars, more work going into that. The 4th area is government support, policy, and regulatory. We also expect that we'll have a lot of regulatory and potential lawsuits coming out of this at the other end. Want to be on top of that. And finally, the 5th area, which is Chamber Tomorrow. How will we evolve through this process, and what role as the regional chamber in North Fulton can we play? So that's the areas and the focus that we have right now. We're very proud of our 6 communities and the work that they've done. And I just appreciate very much the opportunity to serve with all of you. Thank you to the almost 150 people who are on this call. We appreciate all of you working with us, and that's what's going to get us through all of this. Again, Trey, thank you very much. Wendell, thank you for your sponsorship, and mayors, we are blessed to have you. Thank you all so much for doing this with us. And with that, I believe we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.